Hey, welcome to our lesson in the Chinese Civil War. Our group is consisted of Alicia Maya, Ileana Caballero, Rubén Buitrao, and me, Alberto Morini. The skill for this lesson is going to be to identify the causes and effects of the Chinese Civil War. Then the aim is going to be the question, was the Chinese Civil War effective or ineffective? So the do now is going to be to analyze both quotes of Mao Zedong and Chiang Kai-shek and list the keywords that come to your mind after reading them. Include what kind of leaders do you think they sound like? Do they remind you of other leaders that we have studied in world history? Please pause the video and do this activity.
After you finish the do now, pay attention to the next slides. Our first leader is Mao Zedong. He's the leader of the Communist Party. If you can analyze the next pictures, you can see that Mao Zedong is a strict man and he wants the best for his country and knows what he wants. Now we will have a propaganda poster from Mao. As we can see in this propaganda, we can see how he's the light of the community, and it shows how he enlightens people to the right path, trying to lift up the country. Our second leader is Chiang Kai-shek. As we can see in his pictures, he looks like a confident man talking to his community. He is part of the Nationalist Party and is against Mao trying to lift up the country. As we can see in that propaganda poster, there's a lot of people cheering for him when he's doing his speeches.
Your task for this lesson will be to fill in the two-column journal throughout the presentation with the information that will be provided. Pause the video to draw your two-column journal. By the 1930s, the nationalists and the communists were fighting a bloody civil war. Nationalist forces surrounded the communists to attack, but they failed several times. Communist leader Mao Zedong decided to establish in the hills of the south-central China. There he recruited the peasants to join his Red Army. They trained them. In 1933, Jiang and his army surrounded the communist forces. Realizing that they were facing defeat, the communist forces began the Long March.
The Long March was a 6,000 mile long journey. That was a military retreat undertaken by the Communist Army. Its purpose was to evade the Nationalist Army, and its outcome was that the Red Army gained followers and thousands of soldiers died. Many died of hunger, starvation, and yes.
In 1931, Japanese watched them fighting, invaded Manchuria, and in 1937 launched an all-out invasion. Bombings killed thousands and they died of starvation as well. After Japan invaded China, Mao and Chiang made a truce to fight them back and defend their country. Now you see a video about the Chinese Civil War, the Long March, and the invasion of Japan.
Chiang Kai-shek succeeds Dr. Sun and sets out to complete the reunification of the troubled land. In a remote mountain province, a man of the soil, Mao Zedong, challenges Chiang's leadership. A founder of the Chinese Communist Party, Mao believes that the ultimate power in China belongs to the peasants, who make up 80% of the country's population. And so, says Mao Zedong, China's communist revolution must take root in the countryside and then sweep over the cities. For 10 years, Mao and his followers live as outlaws, hunted, pursued, harassed. finally the Red Leader begins his legendary long march in search of sanctuary in the caves of Yan'an. These remarkable and historic motion pictures document the incredible hardships of the 6,000-mile journey, a tortuous roundabout route crossing 18 mountain ranges, some of them higher than the European Alps. In the beginning, there are 180,000 marchers in the communist caravan, but casualties are enormous. 3 out of every 4 marchers die en route. The survivors press on, and Mao himself is on hand to welcome them. There are only a handful of communists in the mountain sanctuary, but they will grow and multiply, reach out and conquer. For Chiang Kai-shek and nationalist China, the sands of time are running out. And yet the nation, its cities and its people reflect little of the unrest and uncertainty that cast their shadows from within and without. Shanghai, 1937. The blow falls. Japan strikes. In China's life and death struggle, Chiang Kai-shek embraces an old enemy, Mao Zedong, as a new ally. Publicly, Mao pledges his support to the nationalists, but privately he orders his followers to work for Chiang's overthrow. Red soldiers march into battle with propaganda posters on their backs. And as the war goes on, Mao's army grows from 40,000 to 1 million men. In 1945, Japan surrenders. China has won the war, but she will lose the freedom that she fought for 8 years to defend and preserve. Post-war China is a nation ravaged by battle. People eat grass. Hunger and misery are deeply etched in every face. Now is the time for Mao Zedong to launch his so-called War of National Liberation. The communist forces are armed with captured Japanese equipment, stockpiled in Manchuria, and seized with Russian assistance. Mao's conquest of the Chinese mainland begins with his followers gaining control of the rural areas. Then, one by one, the major cities are surrounded and isolated, engulfed and occupied. Mukden falls on October 30th, 1948. Peiping on January 22nd, 1949. Shanghai, May 25th, 1949. Canton, October 15th, 1949. And Chongqing, November 15th, 1949. Finally, all of mainland China is overrun by Mao's conquering armies, and 1/4 of the world's population is brought under communist control. Mao Zedong has done in 4 years what the Japanese could not do in 14. The Red Leader and his legions march in triumph into the old nationalist capital of Shanghai. And on October 1st, 1949, Mao proclaims a new capital city, Peking, and a new communist state, the People's Republic of China. There is a new giant in the communist camp, a new voice to be listened to and reckoned with. Mao's words and thoughts are carried out without question or objection. He orders a great leap forward in agriculture, and men and women from 14 to 50 are organized into communes. The results are disastrous. Farm production, instead of going up, goes down. Famine is widespread. Millions die.
Your activity for this lesson will be to write a letter to either Mao Zedong or Chiang Kai-shek explaining why would you follow them. An example for your letter will be starting with Dear Mao Zedong, I strongly believe you are the best leader in China. Then you should list your reasons why you think this. Now pause the video and finish the activity.
That's it for this lesson. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.